could create that ecosystem in a German environment. Is that transposable? Is that something you can replicate in Italy?
And that's what we're working on right now. It requires the cooperation of the central banks in each one of those markets to have allow the same sort of functionality for pledging of baskets via Clearstream to the central bank. So today we do it to the Bundesbank.
Right.
But we do have plans to extend to other.
You plan to extend it to other countries, but when you fly into another country, what you're also asking the regulators to do is to provide you access, to all the other elements in that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we do in that environment is usually work with the local service provider also. So they become part of.
Do you see yourself taking equity in some of these local service providers?
No, we don't take equity, and I don't see ourselves doing it. What we've done, because we have been seen as a facilitator of interoperability, we have created joint ventures with these partners throughout Europe. In fact, we have a joint venture with 9 other CSDs called Link Up Markets, which is really based upon. Well, it's based upon a number of things, but it's based upon an interoperative environment where each CSD can benefit from some of the value-added services of the other CSDs.
Now, is Linked Up a revenue generator for you, or is it just creating?
It's a facilitator.
As a facilitator?
Well, there's a slight revenue generation, but it's only a cost-plus generation because we operate the system. But it really is the facilitator for interoperability, which we would like to see expanded to a global.
So my question for Linked Up is really, what's the end game? I mean, you've created the network, but how do you see yourself extending your business?
What would be best for the world? That one stock exchange, one CCP, and one CSD covering the entire globe. It'll never happen. It is politically infeasible.
Exactly.
It's never going to happen. Yeah. So there have been some regional consolidations. But to really come up with that virtual system, at least at the CSD level on a global basis, there's only one way to move forward. And that way to move forward is interoperability. So you don't destroy the efficient systems of the local market. You allow those local market systems to interact with other local market systems and then give effective cross-border functionality, which does not exist today. That's the problem in the world. So a French investor wanting to buy German securities, they don't have direct access to the, they may have access to the exchange, but they may not have access to the CCP and to the CSD. Through LinkUp, we would give them, that French investor could go through his French CSD, and that French CSD could take him to the German CSD, to the Spanish CSD, to the Dutch CSD, just as he's doing business.
Now, as you build these link ups, what becomes a very important element in all of that is costs of transaction. Because if the cost is prohibitive, you're going to get investors using other routes. So how do you deal with that?
The cost in domestic Europe of domestic settlement is just as efficient as in the United States. There's no excess costs because the markets are highly efficient. The problem is when you go cross-border, and what has been determined in cross-border is that the price could be as high as 10 times more than the price in the U.S. or the price in the domestic market. A number of reasons for that. Some of the reasons have to do with different laws, regulations, different taxation. Right. But what the CSDs are trying to do is to bring down that cost by linking their efficient domestic operations to one another. And so if Germany is very efficient and France is very efficient and they do transactions that are settled on this interoperative environment, you're doing it at the efficient domestic market rates, not the cross-border.
So the partners bring that to the table.
And we said we could deliver somewhere, it depends upon the market, but we think between 20 and initially we've set up to 80% cost savings to cross-border trading.
How do you see Clearstream growing? Yeah. You've described the vertical aspect, but there's the horizontal aspect also, adding asset classes, and pumping them to be larger than what they are right now. What's happening on that front?
Something very interesting is happening in the entire market of post-trading, and it's beginning in Europe, and I think it'll expand beyond. But with the introduction of efficiency initiatives on the part of the regulators, they have set off a chain reaction in the post-trading environment that gives opportunities to some and some risks to others who are not prepared to the future. I think the ECB is the best one to talk about. What they basically did is they came into the CSD market and they said, CSDs, you do settlement, but guess what? 2013, we'll do settlement.
Okay.
So for some CSDs, this is significant. It could be 30, 40, 50% of their revenues. But what the ECB has also said was with T2S, CSDs were taking your revenue away. You need to move up the value chain and become more robust providers of cross-border services. Now, the fact of the matter is, because of the history, the ICSDs have developed over the years into robust providers of cross-border services. So as the future changes, it's a bit of a change in the competitive environment going forward to try to attract investors into market infrastructure, which may be the ICSDs, CSDs who can in fact move up the value chain, and the local agent banks. And I think this will change the way in which business is done in the future. When we spoke about who Clearstream is, I think you could have in the past identified it as the bond market in international, the bond and equity market domestic. But what we didn't talk about was the cross-border equity market.
Yes.
That's the market that T2S creates the opportunity for both market infrastructure and local banks, agent banks in Europe, to compete against one another. Now, the agent banks are very good, but what the market infrastructure has is the investor, especially broker-dealers, always want to be as close to the market infrastructure as possible, because the more links you have in the chain, the more likely it is there's going to be some problem along the chain.
Right, but